It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and how you can have secure and sexy relationships, no matter how you do them. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre.
Hey, Tara.
Hey, Andre. Great. How are you?
I'm great. That music always makes me think like we should be maybe 11 p.m. at night, like kind of like it's like very seductive, very sexy. It always gets me in a good mood.
Yes. Well, it's meant to be playful.
Yeah.
Like we're serious, but we're also playful. That's kind of our jam.
Professional
playful.
Yeah.
So awesome. So welcome everyone to another episode of the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast. I don't know if you've heard this before, Andre, but some people say that in successful relationships, that there's always a kite and a string.
Always?
Whoop.
Interesting.
So they say. So I'm curious from people who are watching us, which one are you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know which one you are?
I think I'd probably identify mostly as a kite, but I think it also depends on whom I'm with.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to talk a bit about that, aren't we?
Yeah, right.
So this is a metaphor that's often used to describe dynamics in monogamous relationships. So we're taking a little bit of a spin on it to see how it might apply in the world of non-monogamy. Because we've had some really interesting conversations about this since we first started chatting about it. So today our topic is kites and strings, relationship roles and dynamics in non-monogamy.
Non-monogamy, yeah. It's interesting because I wonder if in monogamous relationship, there is this kind of binary thing, and it's like you are either this or that. And in our poly world, we get many different opportunities to be different people, and does it lend itself to that? So it's interesting to consider.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about what is a kite and what is a string, how these roles might shift, as you said, when we're with other kites and strings, and dynamics of partnering with different pairings. And we'll also talk a bit about how, if you are one of these things, how you might want to be the other and how to make that happen for you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Why might you want to be the other? Well, it might have a couple of added benefits to it, right? You might be able to appreciate what they're going through, and also the other person, when they go into your role, might also gain an appreciation and understanding of what it's like for you.
Exactly. So let's do a little bit of an introduction for those who are maybe listening to this podcast for the first time. So I am Tara Lynn Franco. I am a relationship and awesomeness coach.
And I am Andre Turcott. I am a sex-positive psychotherapist.
So we do this podcast, and we have all kinds of supports and resources to support individuals and couples navigate consensual non-monogamy, because it's not always easy, and we want to help you make it sexy and secure.
Right, sure.
So we have this podcast, we have our Poly Newbies digital course, and we have our deeper dive group program, Open Relationship and Polyamory Mastery, which we're actually starting a new cohort for in October. So if you want to be part of that, let us know. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be like the new improved Polyamory Mastery course and include coaching with us. So so we'll make sure you have all these links in the resources section of the podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, so let's jump in. Yeah, absolutely. So I recently, this came up, this idea of the kite and string, because I was chatting with one of my clients, and we were talking about something in particular, and he's like, well, his explanation was, well, I'm the kite and she's the string. And I was like, what? And he's like, oh, you don't know that? And he got really excited. He was saying that somebody introduced this concept to him, and when that happened, it increased their self-awareness, so to speak. So is it something you had heard about before?
Not in those terms necessarily, but I think I've kind of heard about the concept of somebody being kind of like the foundation, the rock, and somebody else being the butterfly, and that they could come and go more easily, and the other person felt that way about it. But yeah, it's I think on anything where we are willing to look at ourselves, our roles in these things, and look at the dynamics, I think it's always quite an interesting topic to consider.
Yeah, and like since that time, we've had a lot of conversations between ourselves and then some couples we know, and then we're trying to figure out who's what and that sort of thing.
Right.
And and then thought about like, well, how does this apply in polyamorous or open relationships based on and there's some things we'll talk about based on our own experiences and observations.
Yeah, it just makes me think of the conversation we had at the beach the other day, and thinking about these considerations of how we identify as string or kite, and then if we do go out and pair with another couple, do we end up, consciously or otherwise, finding our way to the one that is most like us, or the one that we've found it to be our complement?
Awesome. Well, let's first explain what a kite and string is, because maybe some people don't know what it is. I mean, I didn't.
I'm not sure I still do. What is it? Tell me.
I actually had a different definition I thought it was, and I was like, but anyways, we'll talk about that.
I'm curious to know what that is.
Yeah. So like a kite that's flying in the air, the kite is what you see soaring through the sky, dancing in the wind. Typically, they're the more carefree in a pairing. They're easygoing, low stress, sometimes more fun person in the pairing. So, and then the string is the one who keeps things grounded, organizes. They're the planner and the schedule keeper.
Does that seem in any way less sexy or less inviting to be the string?
Well, I think it can be. So like in a relationship where there's like a family unit, for example, they might be the one that's like the CAO of the household. So they're making sure that bills get paid. They figure out how to get the kids to soccer practice. They might plan trips and that sort of thing. The string is the kind of the person that makes sure things get done. And we're really generalizing here. So let's just say that too. It's not always the case, but there's usually one person that has more of these characteristics. The string also can sometimes hold onto the kite and make sure they don't fly too far away or bring them back to earth when needed.
I'm curious though, as you say these things, for me, initially, this sounds more like the idea that I'm free and able to go as a kite, and you have to be the string, the thing that keeps it all together. And I'm wondering, what's the incentive for you to be the string? What's the payoff? What is the benefit to it? And if there's not so much, does it then create opportunity or cause for resentment?
Well, it can for sure. But I think sometimes people adopt these rules because it's where their comfort is. Can anyone guess as to who is the string and who is the kite in our situation? Like maybe our podcast picture might give you an idea. I know those people. Yeah. So I think I want to make the point too that like you were saying, like I would say that I'm more the string. People who are the string enjoy being the string to an extent. They like being in control of things. Maybe they like being organized. For me, being a string allows me to feel comfort that things are getting done. Sometimes being the string helps with my anxiety. Sometimes being the string increases my anxiety. Yeah. But I think another point is about kites. And I think kites are perfectly able to do all these things, but they prefer not to in some cases, right? And if they're solo, a kite will have to do these things because they're the only ones, sort of thing.
But on a personal level, I hope you don't mind, but there are times when I feel like I want to help with being the string, but that it's not always met with such enthusiasm that sometimes as a string, you're like, well, I know how I prefer it to be. I know how it should be done. And while it's quite interesting to allow you, that you're not always wondering my version. You're not always appreciating, shall we say, my level of stringship. That sometimes it's not quite the way you want. So I wonder if that presents a question. As a string, are you willing and able to let go of being the string, and would you want to fly as a kite, and how is it for you to fly as a kite?
Yeah, and I think when you raised it earlier, I think sometimes strings also, like, while they're holding on to the string and they want to be the string, they do sometimes get resentful of that role, and they want to be a kite. I sometimes want to be a kite, and I don't want to make all decisions. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking as you're saying that, I'm wondering if I invite you to be a kite with me, are we both then untethered, and where will it land? Does it feel safe enough for both of us to go there? Would it work if we're both so carefree and so spontaneous, or does it automatically need to have somebody who's going to anchor us and keep us from just flying away all the time?
Well, we can talk about it in a bit about being switches, but I think, allowing yourself to be a kite sometimes is good.
Allowing yourself sometimes to be a kite. Is it also good sometimes to allow yourself to be the string?
Yes.
Is it allowing, or is it the need to demonstrate? So does being a kite automatically imply that it's just carefree and easier to do, and that there's a certain level of responsibility or kind of action-oriented things that are dictating are being the string, so that it becomes almost like more of a role or a burden, and the other one is more of an opportunity. And I think I was asking this question earlier, does it in any way indicate our level of psychic maturity? So as an immature little kite, it's free for me. I go around and I'm a butterfly and I just go where the wind takes me, and it's wonderful, but it doesn't necessarily indicate my level of being effective or responsible, even though I may be. In other roles in my life, I'm very responsible, but does it create this unfair burden?
Yeah. Yeah, it can, for sure. It can, for sure. And I think there's burdens on both sides. And sometimes the kite wants to be the string, like you said.
Well, I wonder if I am the string, does it allow you then to become more of the kite?
Well, it might.
If you're able to that role. Yeah.
And I think there's some, kites do, like, as being a string, I know that you show great appreciation for when I take care of things and that sort of thing. So I think that's important to state too. So yeah, so I think that's the basic definition of kites and strings. Would you say we covered it all?
Pretty much.
Okay, so and all generalizations, I think that's important to say. Like, this is just kind of for fun. It's kind of an interesting idea to look at and might help you to have another perspective on your relationships. So
yeah, to appreciate the other person's position, right? Yeah. And maybe it's good to do some switching on occasion. Maybe we do like being in our roles, but maybe when we step outside of it, it does help us to appreciate not only our privileges, right, but also what it's like for the other person to be in their role.
Yeah, and maybe it is a burden also to be a kite, that you also always have to be the fun-loving one, the playful one. Maybe that's also a burden too.
Personally, it's not so bad.
Okay, so then the other thing we were talking about, which I think is interesting, and you mentioned at the beginning, is what happens when we pair with other kites and strings. Who do we pair with? So
yeah, I mean, I don't think we have yet the formal data to suggest that it really does happen, but I've noticed on more than one occasion when we do pair with people, very often it seems as though I might go towards somebody who is more like a kite, and I see that you might be with somebody who is more like a string, and I wonder if we kind of get that feeling like, oh yeah, they get me in this way, or it frees me to be with other kites and we don't have to feel as though we're in any way tethered or considering that dynamic. It's another opportunity to experience the other side of it, or the side that's more familiar to us.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think there's a couple different situations. So, we see some couples together, and there's definitely kites and strings. You can tell who the kites and strings are, but one of the couples we see the most, I would say that you actually pair more with the string and I pair with the kite.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So that kind of counters what I was saying, the opportunity to experience the other thing. We kind of replicate that same position. Do we do that because it is familiar to us and we do feel comfortable that way? If I were simply a kite flying in the wind untethered, would I feel as though it's in some ways unsafe because I'm not knowing where my base is? Whereas having that string connecting me, I know where my safe haven is. I know that there is this thing that will allow me to go out, but also I can come back to, and it feels quite secure.
Well, some of the reading I was doing says that in a pairing, there can't be two kites. So someone will always take on the string role.
That's interesting, because I've noticed that when I was in a relationship with a kite and string at the same time, when I was with the kite, I automatically became more of the string and wanted to kind of afford them all of the luxuries that a string would offer.
And do you find it's different than when we date separately? If you think back to the people that you've dated on your own, do you find you were more with kites or strings or a mixture?
That's a great question. I hadn't really thought about it through. I'll have to get back to you on that. I think that I have both sides to me.
Yeah.
So I think it excites me to take on both of those roles. I'm very switchy to begin with. So maybe I do find the opportunity to experience both, to be both the string and the kite.
Yeah, and I know.
What about you?
Well, I'm just thinking back to a few people. One of my boyfriends was definitely also a string. The joke was like we ended up putting off being intimate because we were talking about other things like business. We love talking about business and computers and systems and stuff like that. And then so we were very much sort of strings together. And maybe they did allow me to be more of a kite in some situations.
What was that like for you?
It's good. It's freeing. And I think that sometimes when you're the string, you can often crave being the kite. In fact, I'm actually working with a couple, and the one person is more of the string in their relationship. And what they said they like about their other partner is that they allow them to be the kite. And I think that's often true too when we date other people. So say you're in a situation where you have a family and that sort of thing, you're a mother, you're a parent and all that stuff. As soon as you step out of that, you can adopt on a new identity. It's because you're with somebody where you don't have those particular roles. And so in those situations, I can understand why they feel more like being a kite. But then it does then bring up this idea that maybe I want to be more of a kite in a normal relationship.
Right. So being with a completely different partner, a different person, you don't have all of those roles that you might in your primary relationship. So it allows you that expression. But I wonder, going back to our primary relationship, if we are string or kite and we're wanting to have a bit of the other experience, how could we invite that? How can we ask that of our partners, and how could we demonstrate that? What can we do to encourage that kind of exchange?
Well, what do you think? Do you have some ideas?
Well, I think, maybe it's not always so romantic, but in a very practical way, we can simply know what it is we're wanting and try to announce that. So I am the string and I would like to fly a bit. So I might say to you, well, how about we create a situation where I feel as though I am just being taken out on a date, and I don't have to do the planning. I don't have to think about how we're going to have a babysitter or which restaurant we're going to go to. All the things that I might normally do, I might ask that or invite that of you. I might alert you to the idea that this would be interesting to me, and would you be willing and wanting to participate in this? And I say, well, okay, sure. I think it'd be good for us. I think it might be maybe challenging, unfamiliar to me, but maybe there's an opportunity for growth there. And I say, yes, let's give this a shot and see how we do. And let me know how I'm doing.
Yeah, and we do that. I think I have asked you to do that in our situation.
So you might invite me to be the string, and maybe there's a formula to it. It lays out and says, well, part of being a string is to be responsible, to plan, to do these things, to think ahead, to have all these things. How do I allow for and encourage you to be a kite? So I say, well, you don't have to worry about the planning. You don't have to do this. But it relieves the practical considerations. But emotionally, how do you release yourself from these considerations? How do you turn it over and say, no matter what they plan as a string, it's going to be okay? Maybe it's not the way I would do it. Maybe it's not the control area that I would want. But how can I really allow myself to go at it as a kite? Maybe there isn't that same formula or criteria used. Maybe it's more of a feeling state. And how do I allow myself to feel that freeness of the kite?
Well, I think some of it has to do with a bit of trust. You have to trust your partner. You have to give them a chance to do it, right? And I think we do that. And, it's exactly what I told my clients that I'm working with, is that I told them he had to be the string. You got to be the string. And as the new string, the switchy string, the new kite might want to know that this is the things you're doing.
But see, that to me, that falls back into the pattern of being the string and still has the control. I want to, as a kite, do I feel that pressure and say, well, am I going to be a good enough string? Will I have it planned to their satisfaction? Will they be able to tolerate my role as the string?
So does that prevent you sometimes from doing things and planning things?
Maybe in the back of my mind.
Because you're worried I'm going to judge it?
Will it be up to your standards? Will it be a string enough for you?
String enough.
Well, because as a kite, I might say, well, we'll go out for dinner. Does it really need a reservation, or can we just fly by the seat of our pants? We'll figure it out. We always have. So maybe it's not quite to your standards or the criteria you might use as the perfect string, but will it still be good enough to allow you to experience the flight as a kite?
For sure. But as you know, when I'm hungry and we try to find a place that's to eat, sometimes being too kite about it is not always the best solution. But then again, we've had some amazing experiences like that when we were in Barcelona. Remember, we were on the little scooter and we were just scootering around, and we just randomly stopped on a corner, and there was that seafood place on the corner.
What a great example, because in that part, I was driving the scooter. I was the string. I was directing where we were going to go. I was just making those decisions, and it allowed you to be freer and kite-like.
Yeah, I think I'm more kite-like on vacations, in part. Not necessarily the planning of the vacation, but once I'm there. So we were talking about being a switch, and use the term switch because it's something that's used in BDSM, like the dominant and the submissive. And, I think we all have the ability to be both. And I like your idea about challenging each other to be it. Yeah.
I was going to mention before
Yeah.
the opportunities that we might allow ourselves in this demonstration. So if it is you and I, we are quite used to the dynamics that we have already set in place, and maybe it's harder to step out. But what about when we do go on other dates with people, or even a scenario like going to a sex club or a party? Could we then feel as though, well, these things are already constructed, and now I'm freer to just be kite-like in these scenarios, in these parties?
Yeah, I like a little bit of planning, and then I can feel more kite-like.
Well, the club has already planned everything for you.
Yes, that's true.
For the most part, right? How we're going to interact with others is up to us. But I mean, they've already created the venue. There's already rules in place. There's already all the structure, which might then make it easier and more permissible for you to say, I'm going to be a kite. I'm going to leave this. It's not my responsibility. I can just go and see where the wind takes me.
I wonder if it's similar to if you think about people who have really high-powered jobs where they have to be a string all the time. Do they typically want to be more of a kite in relationships? Do they want to break? Because it's the same idea sort of in BDSM. I think typically people who are more dominant in their career and their life want to be more submissive.
It gives us balance, right? Yeah. Because it's good to have control, but it's also good to let go. And having the experience of two can be very interesting for many people. And many people are like, no, I am the dominator and I always want to be the dominator. I am submissive and I just feel much better being that way. Somehow we were going to talk about the analogy of having the key, the Ben Franklin thing, and how the key, well, he had the string and he had the kite, but then when he added the key, it attracted electricity and created a new experience. And I wonder how that metaphor could be played into this consideration of when and if we were to bring in a third person, and then how does that affect the dynamics of our relationship and who we might be.
I don't even think it has to be a third person. I think the key is actually the idea of being in an open or polyamorous relationship. It allows this spark of electricity and interest and that sort of thing. And for many people, it is bring the excitement back into a relationship. Not that it solves problems. We never suggest that. But it can be something that supercharges your relationship.
But that's a great point to bring up. Yeah, I hadn't considered that. I thought I was, in my mind, materializing or imagining a third being. But maybe it's just the idea of the dynamic of this, that we could have these different opportunities to experience this. Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, doing a threesome or being in a group. Maybe there's multiple keys, or like a foursome or moresome. Yeah, that can supercharge a connection.
Or simply being non-monogamous gives us the idea that there are opportunities where we can go into these different roles without there actually being the third person.
Absolutely. So I think being able to switch and take on different roles is super important in long-term relationships. I think another example of how we do this is we're thinking about we're going on a big trip soon, and in terms of the planning. And I think every time we've gone on a trip, we've sort of done this sort of idea. Maybe I have a different concept of it, but I'll tell you what I think happens. I think we decide generally what we're going to do. And sometimes it comes about randomly, like this time, like we weren't planning on going where we're going, but an opportunity arose and we took it, and then we created a trip around it. So we start with kind of a basic idea, and then my favorite kite kind of goes like, what if we went here? What if we went here? We could pop over here. We could pop over here. And I might say, oh, I don't know, that might be too much. Or why don't we explore this? And why don't we explore this? And I think when we went to Italy and also Portugal, we did this where I kind of got some ideas. I did some research. You did research too, for sure, about places we wanted to go to. When we were in Portugal, for example, we had a general idea of where we were going. But then you were always really great at picking the best Airbnbs. I feel like we should not put that in my hands. That is where you are really good at being a string. You have some magic to that. But when we went to Portugal, we were going to go in a certain direction towards Porto, and then you were looking for our next place to stay, and you found this amazing like off-grid farm where we stayed in a yurt, which was not planned and ended up being like an amazing experience. So much so that we changed our whole plan and stayed an extra day there.
So what I'm hearing is that in that kind of experience, that kind of scenario, we allow ourselves to share in both the kite and string activities, performance,
Mhm.
responsibilities,
Yeah.
and that is really serving us well.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
And that feels good to me. Like I
Mhm.
feel like I don't, when we do trips, I don't have to plan everything,
Right.
you know, and there's also some spontaneity in it, you know, and this trip in particular, we have some stuff at the beginning and stuff at the end, but we kind of have a very fuzzy middle section that we're still sort of sorting out.
So not only are we taking a vacation in the traditional sense, but we take a vacation from our roles
Mhm.
as kite and string.
Mhm.
But we can do that even staying at home on a daily basis, right? Even just planning activities or taking initiatives and things.
Yeah, sometimes I allow myself to be led by my favorite kite on a little adventure. Oh,
Mhm.
like last Saturday when you said, "Would you like to go on an adventure?" And I'll show you my little secret swimming hole. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Sure." And so I just followed you. I mean, I did some ask like, "Are we turning here? Where are we going? Is it gonna live? Are we gonna eat?" Like there was a bit of that, but then you pointed it out and you were like, "Okay, just follow."
I know exactly the incident you're speaking of, and I remember you were asking those questions, and I knew the way. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I had already planned it out,
Mhm.
but I wonder what it was like then. My invitation to you, my appealing to you, that you might let go of the string roll and allow yourself to just tether yourself to my string and allow yourself to be the kite, and what that was like for you to go outside of your own immediate comfort zone to allow for this new expression.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it was great. I mean, I had such a great time. I think for me, it's easier for me to be a kite when I'm free from obligations.
Well, for
Like
sure.
that day, we actually did some work in the morning, so I felt like I had accomplished something. If I hadn't, and I was worried about those things, it might have been harder for me to be a kite. So that's another thing is sometimes situationally and
Mhm.
timing is important.
Great data to know, right? So, in order for me to really appreciate this new opportunity, what do I have to have in place in order to feel as though I can cut that string and be the kite,
Mhm.
or give myself more rope in that string? Maybe it's a better way. So, yeah, you know that. Well, I have to have certain things in place already for me to really do that. And as your partner, I'll know these things as well. If I just spring it on you and you still have a mountain of work or responsibility, or these other parts are not yet satisfied, it's going to be much more difficult for you. And I think that's understandable of anybody. It's going to be harder to slip into this other role. Right?
Yeah.
So
Or even frustrating too.
for
Like
sure.
we've had that experience, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got this whole position that you have all these attachments to, and all these responsibilities, all these things that you are doing, and then I uh, offer you spontaneity. Hey, come away with me and be a kite right now. You're less likely to really allow yourself or appreciate the benefits of it than if these things have already been satisfied. Then you feel okay. Now I feel as though this would be a better opportunity. But we get all that through the sharing of data by talking about it and recognizing these features.
I was just going to say that. So it's just like communication. Timing is an important factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, timing's super important. So you were telling me about a situation where you recall having a string and kite relationships simultaneously.
Yeah, which is great for me because I think I live in both realms simultaneously. Right, there are times when I am very responsible, and there's still this kind of carefree, spontaneous part of me that wants to not be tethered. The rebel in me, sort of, and having these two different people in my life simultaneously really gave me opportunity to feed both sides of those and made me feel as though I could be both the string and kite.
Are there specific things you're thinking of? Not to put you on the spot.
Well, in my role as a string, I found myself kind of emulating a lot of things that you do, that I would think ahead of time and well, okay, what are we going to do for this, that, and the other thing? And it makes me have to kind of be more mindful of the provisions necessary to put in place. And then when I was the kite, I felt as though, well, these things are already taken care of. And it really does allow me to find these new heights in being the kite.
It makes me think of NRE and how sometimes an issue comes up in relationships when somebody who's normally the kite then meets someone they really like, and then they start planning dates and doing things and that sort of thing. And their partner, who's the string, is like, hey, you don't plan those things for me. And so there can be that jealousy and some of that dynamic that happens. And so it's another thing to be aware of. It made me think of it when you were telling me that. Because I think that happens a lot, right? When we
Exactly.
date other people, we make plans, right? But if we normally have a kite in our relationship, if it's our comfort zone, maybe we don't do that as much. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I think it depends again who we are attracting. Are we attracting a string or a kite? So if we're attracting a kite, do we imagine that they are going to plan out all these things? Or if we go with the string, do we then assume, well, maybe they're more likely to do these things?
I know for me, when I date someone new, I'm like, I just want them to make a plan. They're like, oh, whatever you want to do. I hate the, oh, whatever you want to do thing. I'd be like, why don't we go here? What do you think of this? And make a suggestion. And then I'd be like, okay, yeah. But I don't want to choose. I want someone to take kind of the lead. Because maybe when I date other people, maybe that's where I want to release my stringiness.
That's interesting, because as a kite, I sometimes feel as though it becomes this great burden, in a sense that I have to plan, and not that I'm not willing to make the effort, but will the plan be satisfactory? Will it be good enough? Will it be the right plan? And it kind of puts it out there. But I can appreciate that when we do plan, it does sort of indicate, or often will indicate, a level of interest and desire, saying, well, I cared enough to make this plan. And the absence of such might in some ways often say, well, it doesn't really seem like he's that interested. He's not really caring to plan so much. Maybe it's less about the plan and more about the demonstration of intention or investment.
Yeah, I think there has to be that. For me, there has to be that demonstration. I don't like the, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And you're like in this back and forth. I just want like someone to decide, and I don't want it to always to be me. If I really like the person, I might make a plan and say, like, how about this? But I don't want to always have to do that. And then I lose interest pretty quickly. If, because we tell ourselves stories, and if it's someone we don't know, even more so. So, yeah. So there's a couple of other metaphors out there that we came across. There was the rock and the string. The rock. Oh, no, not rock and string. It was rock and kite, I think. Rock and kite. Yeah. I wrote down rock and string.
That's interesting.
That's interesting. So what does that say?
Well, I'm wondering, initially it makes you think, well, do you feel as though there's no choice, that you have to be the string? I'm either going to be the rock or the string, and being a kite is not an option.
Yeah, so the rock and the string, it's pretty similar. It describes a situation where one partner's role is to be the rock, the grounded person. They make logical decisions, thinking with their head and not with the heart. And then the other partner is the kite, the one who wants to fly. They're often more impulsive and act upon what their gut tells them. What's interesting about all these pairings, though, is that we do find people that are different than us. Like, I don't think I'd want to be with a string all the time. I like having a kite. You're my favorite kite.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, I think it is interesting to, on occasion, be with somebody who's kind of similar in that sense, but I don't know that it is as emotionally sustainable for me, because then it feels as though it's too much of the same. And while the spontaneity is wonderful, the chaos might sometimes, it's like too much of a good thing almost. Not quite, but it doesn't ground me the same way. And I think I sometimes, as a kite, don't want to feel as though I'm simply going to fly away. I do want to sometimes feel as though there is a connection back to, and it makes me feel secure. And it makes me feel secure to have a kite sometimes, that I can free myself and allow myself to fly away with you. I do want to say something too, is like, there's one area where I think you've really taken on more of the string, because it used to be there were certain parts of your business, for example, like your practice, that you didn't enjoy doing. And you would ask me for help, and I would always help you. But I got to the point where I think I was feeling a bit resentful about it, because I was, it was becoming my responsibility. And then if something was missed, then it was like, oh, I didn't do that because I assumed you were going to do it. And I think this is one area where you've really stepped up and you've gone beyond your comfort zone to do those things. It's interesting that you should mention the resentment part of it. And I wonder, as a string, if we are more likely to experience resentment. As a kite, what could I really resent you for? Well, maybe sometimes I feel as though there's not enough string. I want to fly a little bit higher, a little bit.
Yeah.
wider.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But really, the idea is that how can we then alert ourselves to the potential for resentment before it becomes a resentment?
Yeah.
So how could we, and I think part of being the switch really allows for that, because it helps me to appreciate, well, what does it actually involve? What are the things necessary to be in your role? And then when I am in your role, I can come back and say, oh, wow. So for me to fly as a kite, you might feel as though all of these components have to be in place in order for you to be a good string. And if I am able to recognize those things and participate in some of those, maybe then you might feel less resentful in being the string as opposed to not being the kite.
Yeah, for sure. And our trip again is a great example of this. We started doing the planning and you were like, I would really like this all like organized because it's a lot. And you took the initiative to put it all in a Google document so that we can collaborate.
Well, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but anybody who actually knows me,
it's a big deal.
I'm trying to refrain from saying I don't have a good relationship with technology.
Yes.
I have a better relationship with technology, but I'm not known for my prowess in being able to make spreadsheets and things like that nature. But I do see the benefits to it, and I realize the work that you do put into that. So I said, well, let me see if I can do that. And you know what I've come to find out? You don't do very much work at all. It's easy. That's not true. That's not true. No, it made me appreciate just how much you do for that. And I think it's great.
Well, it made me appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And on your point of resentment, this is actually something I did with a couple that I was working with as well, is they decided that it would be helpful to take turns in planning things. And so they alternate between planning date nights. Mm-hmm. And so the one person, they just tell them like what exactly they have to wear or bring or whatever. And then the one person just, plans everything, you know what I mean? And they alternate that. And that was kind of a fun way to sort of take on a different role and also not feel like you're the responsible one to plan the time.
I think I heard what you were saying. I was listening, but at the same time, I did have another thought that came to mind. I was wondering if you might be able to tell me or other partners, how could I be a better kite? How could I be a better string? Maybe sometimes I pull too much on the string. I want to go too wild in the wind, and maybe that doesn't work well with you. What, if anything, could I do to be a better person in that role?
I don't know. Did you have some ideas?
No, I was just thinking about criticism for you. Maybe sometimes I do want a little bit more length in the string, but then
we're like Tara, like, can you just like relax,
But that is counterproductive because I'm pulling at the string, and what happens is when we feel that tug, then we want to hold on even tighter, right? As opposed to finding a way to recognize what might be driving this position and what would make you feel perhaps more secure, where you can let out a bit more string.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I've been feeling like I could let out a bit more string, but it's nice to be reminded. We still have to figure out gentle ways of doing it if we are tugging too hard. And I do tug too hard, and some of it's out of feeling insecure or unsure, and strings probably also like certainty is something that they value. And so if you can have certainty in being more free about things, like it sounds counterintuitive, but I think it's possible. And then I think maybe, can let out the string a bit more.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that earlier part of switching, right? Being considerate of the other person's position, being aware of what it's like for them, and then that might inform us how we could be better kites, better string.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to work on being a better kite.
And I'll work on being a better string.
Well, you have been.
All right.
Awesome. There was another analogy of a kite and a blender, which I didn't really like.
No, I don't like that one.
You don't want to mention it? No. Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. We'll pass on that one. You can look it up yourself. Was there anything else you wanted to chat about on this topic? Love to hear from you what your thoughts are always. And just a reminder that this October, we're going to open up a new cohort for our updated Deeper Dive group program, Open Relationship and Polyamory Mastery. But in the meantime, you can still get our digital course over the summer and get started so that you have an amazing, sexy, and secure fall.
Awesome.
And another thing is that we're getting near the end of season 1. So we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back in September with some all new content, guest speakers. I'm super excited. We've been talking to a few people, and we've got a super awesome lineup.
We sure do.
Plan.
Cool.
So thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
And see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
If you want to explore polyamory, open up a relationship, or try your hand at swinging, we can help. Check out our website at terranandre.com for information on our Poly Newbies digital course, or our deeper dive open relationship and polyamory mastery program where you get direct coaching from us. There's also other individual and couples coaching options there as well. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with TNA. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some love on your favorite podcasting platform. You can check out the show notes for any of the links to the courses or information we talked about today. Thanks and have a fantastic and sexy day.